When it comes to traditional style Turkish bows, Şimşek is one of the more well-known brands. Based in Turkey, Şimşek have several lines of bows inspired by historical sources, including multiple varieties of the Ottoman Sipahi. This one is the Hybrid Plus and one of the shortest bows I've shot, coming in at €350, which is about the same price in US dollars. This is a pricier mid-range bow, considering that it is made entirely from fiberglass. But don't let that fool you. This is the base model of the Sipahi Hybrid Plus. Draw weight goes from 30 to 34 pounds to 45 to 54 pounds. The regular version has a plain black leather wrapping, while there is an option to have a traditional art for a significantly higher cost. As I mentioned earlier, this is one of the shorter bows I've shot, coming in at 47 inches. While it is a very light and kind of aggressive bow, it is very short in draw length, coming in at a recommended 28 to 29 inches, which is pretty average for most people. Though if you're shooting a long draw method, then this might be troubling. For me, it's just right, as someone with shorter draw length, but for people with longer draw lengths, this might be quite challenging. Visually, there's not much that makes this basic model stand out. Again, there are more expensive art models. The plain black one does have a gold accent along the edges, which is fairly nice, but overall it is a fairly straightforward and simple bow. Now, as we go with the size, it is a very thin, as in a very skinny, narrow bow. So it is extremely light and extremely easy to draw, but one of the challenges is the very small grip. So if you're not used to this particular style of Turkish bow, this may again be a challenging to use, but otherwise it is a very nice, gentle, very light grip. So I took the bow out to 50 meters as I normally do, and it was very fun, light and easy to use. The low draw length was a bit challenging because I couldn't really anchor correctly and have a good aim point, so I tend to shoot more instinctively and do a bit more speed shooting than I normally would, so the accuracy really drops off past 30 meters. So it was still fun to use, and my caveat again is I'm using the wrong arrow. The only set I have is a bit too stiff for this particular bow, so it won't fly particularly well at long distance. Nonetheless, extremely fun. Watch me suffer. Okay. Okay. That was a nice one. Still high right. Oh, still high right. Yeah. Oh, middle high. This is a very, very small bow. Perhaps the smallest bow I've reviewed, apart from the tiny bow, but that doesn't really count. But this is seriously a small bow. A lot of the bows you would experiment with for Asiatic thumb shooting or Eastern styles tend to be significantly larger than this. So as we said before, this is based off the historical designs from the Middle Ages, and the size and weight complement that. It also has implications over how you handle or shoot this bow, and when you shoot this kind of bow, certain techniques and methods make sense. So it's very important to underline that when you shoot thumb draw is not a universal technique. It's not every single archer east of Turkey would shoot the same methods. The bows were adapted to match particular methods and vice versa. And when you examine a bow like this and how archers would have shot, certain things make sense, and we'll demonstrate that as we go on. So as we said, extremely small, extremely light. Now I had an interesting time figuring out how to grip it. So again, the grip is meant to be a replica of the size that was seen back then. very small grip, so you can't really grasp it in a complete grip. You can, but you also must pay attention to the pressure or where it is on the grip and the squeeze you have. So there's a bit of pre-tension or pre-torque, but it is flexible enough we can hold in a variety of different ways. But if you have very big hands, it might be challenging to figure out how exactly you hold this. But it is designed quite well, and once you figure it out, it is very comfortable to use. As we said, the lightweight and the small size make it very easy to handle. Now in general, the smaller size means less stability, but it does mean faster handling, which means it's more suitable for certain kinds of shooting. We've already done the 50-meter shooting, so you're seeing that. My setup isn't right. This is a borrowed bow. My arrows are a bit too long for this and a bit too stiff, I think, so it does deflect. Nonetheless, it does shoot relatively well. So let's send a few arrows towards the blank gold target down there. So first shot, let's have a look. Oh, very nice, very nice. So this does have a fairly short draw. Most bows I have are obviously much larger. You can pull them back further. This one hits a wall. Now, we did say the draw length will be recommended 27-28 inch, depending on which Sipahi model you're using. I think this one goes to 30 inch maximum, but you definitely hit that wall at around 28 inches. You can go a little further, but it goes light to brick wall, and then you might just go across it a bit here. So when I was demonstrating earlier on the long distance, I was kind of short drawing, and a lot of Ottoman techniques do have a short draw. The long draws are more common in, say, Chinese or Japanese styles, but the short draw is more common with Turkish styles. So let's send a few more in. Oh, it does feel good, man. There's no doubt about that. I'm not used to the draw because I'm not sure exactly where I want to stop. It's not like I can overdraw it, but it does have a hard stop. That's what I'm trying to say. There's a wall you reach. So you kind of want to stop when you hit it. But obviously, as you can see, once you dial it in, it's very consistent. Very consistent. I mean, it's only like 5 meters, but you know, any bow that you can instinctively shoot like this at 5 meters is a pretty fun bow. This is a very intuitive bow. I'm telling you this, like, it's actually surprisingly nice to handle. Oh goodness, why was I doing this in the long distance stuff? Oh, that's a bad shot, but yeah. First impressions of this shooting at this range is, like I said, the short draw is deceptive for someone who's used to longer bows, whether you're going from Western to Eastern, or you're shooting the long Asiatic horse bows and going to a short Turkish bow. It's a bit different. It feels good, but it feels different if you're not used to it. Now, the length and the draw of the bow is quite deceptive because while this is like a 40 to 44 pound version, it doesn't feel like it when you first draw it because it's so light. I wouldn't say it's smooth, I would say it's very light when you draw. It only really hits hard at full draw when you really see the geometry of the bow. We'll show it here, you can see, hopefully it's safe there. Like when you start here, it looks pretty normal. When you go all the way, you can see how the limbs really shape up. So that's pretty cool, but I didn't really notice that I was shooting a heavier or medium weight bow until after like rapid firing all those long distance shots. I felt like, oh, then I felt it. So it is deceptively light and deceptively fun. But it's gentle. I wouldn't say there's much hand shock or vibration, but it is deceptive because it feels easy. That's a good thing. Definitely a bow where you feel that lightness, and that means there's more, I guess, contact and sensitivity with the bow. Like there's less in the way. which tends to mean that you can feel the feedback of the shot a lot more. So you can pay more attention to how you hold it, how you draw it. And well, yeah, the lightness just feels like you're holding nothing. It's a very different feeling. So very, very satisfying. Now, since I'm on the topic of Turkish bows, it's probably worth noting, like I said before, how different bows adapt to different techniques. And one of the things you'll see a lot of people do is hatra, which is that forward flick or the follow through. This is not universally used. And I've discussed in previous videos that hatra isn't always necessary. A lot of people who learn and teach thumb draw, especially self-taught or using various sources, automatically assume that you should be using hatra. The purpose of hatra primarily is to help arrow clearance. If your arrows are properly spined, you won't really need it. Now mine aren't properly spined, so it might help to do so. But the other thing to consider is whether the bow wants to be pushed forward. That's why I will say to people, you do what the bow wants you to do. Certain bows are balanced in a way where it will naturally want to move based on your grip, based on the shape. So for people who shoot heavier bows, hatra will feel quite unnatural. You're kind of forcing yourself to throw it or torque it, and that can make the shot worse. So when you consider bows like this, which are much smaller and significantly lighter, it makes more sense why these bows will see more dynamic hatras, because their weight and shape and size enable them to be used in such a way. So if I were to say do a forward hatra where I push the bow forward and let it follow through, let's try that. Let's get the grip right, squeeze it, let's push it forward. It makes sense to do that because the bow allows me to do so. If I do a let's do a side hatra, where I allow the bow to move to the side. You can do it that way. Let's do the whole flick thing where you go reverse like that, right? The whole paint the ground. I'm sure Gao Ying's turning his grave right now, right? Let's paint the ground with this. Does it make sense? The bow allows you to do so. And I've tried doing this with other bows. I've got the large red short Hungarian bow, ironically short Hungarian, very heavy bow, very weighted, very good balance, but it doesn't really want to move. Whereas these shorter bows do feel like they're supposed to be shot in this way. So this is quite important to consider when you're choosing your release technique. Like there is no one correct default good technique for thumb draw or any kind of archery. You have to consider what context the technique was used in, what equipment you were using. So that's why I'm saying that this kind of bow makes more sense with certain techniques. And same thing for like speed shooting or even flight shooting. The light bows allow you to draw much quicker with less effort. And the war kind of means you know when to let go, because a lot of these techniques using these bows, they're not long holds. You see me with the longer bows, I'll hold for longer, align, and then release. And you can do it with this bow. But this bow also feels more conducive to the speed. So if I do the whole draw back and release in one motion, which is a very common technique, I'll draw back and release. That also makes a lot of sense. So if looking for a bow to shoot instinctively and fairly rapidly, if that's what you want to do, this kind of short bow, the Şimşek Sipahi, makes more sense. That's why I feel compelled to do it. I don't have to, but I can repeatedly shoot fairly quickly and instinctively where possible, because the bow lets me do that. I don't feel I have to reset the position. The weight feels fine, and like we said, I don't have to hold it. I can pull back, let go. If we're doing the 4-step drill, we go the whole, 1, 2, my ring stuck, 3 and 4, 1, 2, 3 and 4. It's easy with this kind of bow because, like I said, the handling is so light and easy. If you want to take your time and aim, sure, of course, pick an anchor point. Again, a lot of the Ottoman styles are fairly short in draw. You have a point more close to modern target archery. Let's say I'm anchoring at my cheek or my chin. I can do it that way, align and shoot. Wasn't very good instinctively, of course. But I feel this bow is very rewarding to shoot just by pulling it back, looking target, and letting go. It feels very natural. So overall, I feel the Şimşek Sipahi, this particular version, the hybrid S Plus, but I feel that most of them have very similar designs, different appearances, but these are very, very nice handling bows. They are among the smallest and lightest, perhaps the most comfortable considering the balance of it, right? So not the bow I would use for like very long distance target shooting, but definitely a bow that is flexible to be used for rapid shooting, for horseback archery, short mid-range, flight. Overall, this is a very satisfying bow to shoot. If this was one of those video games, if I give it stats, the handling stat is very high. Stability might be kind of average. It is a short bow. It's kind of a narrow, skinny bow too, so it might not feel stable and solid and balanced, but it makes up for it with its lightweight and very easy handling. If there's any kind of downside, I guess, is that it is quite a different style of bow. If you're not used to Turkish bows and the size and the shape, especially the grip, it can be tricky to learn with. Other bows might be more forgiving. Looking at, for example, the Mongol style bows or the Chinese style bows, they're a bit more typical of what an Asiatic bow will look like. This is very iconic and ubiquitous to Turkish archery. So if that's the style you're doing, this is very appropriate and very popular. But if you're not used to it, it may have a bit of a learning curve. But nonetheless, the bow itself, very well worth it. Definitely a workhorse. Again, the design means it's more durable, less vulnerable to the elements. Definitely a bow you can leave around and bring out and shoot, and it'll perform the same for you. So it's not a luxury bow, it's a workhorse of a bow. And for the time I've had it, I've definitely enjoyed using it. Anyway, I hope that was interesting and helpful. Thank you all for watching, and hopefully we'll see you next time.